Good morning and welcome to Stone Creek. Opening verse is in the chat. The profound and wondrous Dharma is rarely encountered even in 100 million kalpas. Having it to hear, accept, and maintain, may I taste the truth of the Tathagata's words.
Good morning, good morning. Good morning, all my friends. So the last time I gave a talk, I talked about faith and awakening. I told the story of the donut sellers, these sisters who awoke to the reality of their life and the paths they took with their spiritual self-confidence. So today I want to talk about, well, confidence in what? You know, what does it look like? What does it feel like? Is living in the Dharma world just a great idea? Or can it be your lived and felt reality? And how can you tell? We all know we want to feel more settled and less alienated. And we all sense, or we wouldn't be here, that the Dharma offers a way to feel less precarious and more connected, more at home in the world. But what is this more settled or peaceful or at ease and kinder or wiser? It's one Dharma world, one reality, but we each experience it differently, each as our own subjective self. Just as we each experience universal suffering individually in our own self. So the donut selling sisters took different paths. One became a recluse in the mountains and one continued selling donuts in town. Either way, life is a matter of chopping wood and carrying water, or of logging onto Zoom and fixing dinner. Each of us has a life of ordinary activity, whether we call it simple or complex, most often complex. And the sisters' spiritual confidence wasn't a free pass to ease. What changed was their experience of what their lives were about. And when your experience of what your life is about changes, you can change the way you engage your life and your world. So there is a perhaps endless array of ways to know the Dharma, to accord with the Dharma, to be in accord with, in sync with, meshed with the Dharma. And one isn't better than the others. Each and all are the Buddha way. It's a way, the Buddha way, that takes into account the beauty and love and the dire and suffering. Takes it all into account. Since it takes it all into account, it can take us into account. So, however you or I experience it, the Dharma is the natural order encompassing our lives. It's the universe endlessly coming together and rolling on and changing. We each experience it in our own way through the filters of our personal life. So it makes life, human life, so varied and rich. But it's not just the filters of our personal life, because our life is made of each other's lives. So it's also a shared awareness, and we can talk about it, and more importantly, even enact it together. Like right now. This is what we're doing, each in our individual personal way, and in this case, not even in a zendo, but in our personal little home place space, we are enacting the Dharma together, perceptibly and imperceptibly. So the process of zazen, of chanting, of doing ceremonies, of coming together today, these are all ways of engaging the Dharma. That is, in doing these things, we are living in terms of the Dharma. We are according with the Dharma. And the rest of the time, well, we're still in the Dharma world. We're still Dharma beings. With our skittering minds and volcanic erupting delusions, it's harder for us to know this, and then harder for us to engage. What we can't see, we trip over instead of engaging. And then it's harder to act and live in terms of the truth of our lives. Our practice every day and our spiritual self-confidence start right where we are, wherever we are. In the midst of being a deluded person who acknowledges that we don't know, that we need to keep waking up to our delusions and to the truth of Dharma. It can only, waking up, being in accord with the Dharma, knowing where you are, only starts as a deluded person, because that's where we start out. And in ways, of course, we never stop being a deluded person, but when we are engaging with the Dharma, then this deluded person is not only a deluded person, it's a person actively living out the life of the Dharma. As we engage our practice and turn toward the Dharma over the years of our practice, and most of us have been practicing a very long time, we come to see that the Buddha Dharma is a true language for the larger reality that encompasses us. And it's also a language for our own actions and relations in the world. And as we turn toward the Dharma and accept and meet this language of Dharma as our language, that's in a sense way we support the Dharma, acknowledging and aiming to understand and take part. And the Buddha Dharma, in reciprocal fashion, supports us. Everything in this life, when we turn toward it, it turns toward us. Occasionally, in delusion, it seems to turn away, but it's still a response to us. And in our true Dharma world, when we turn toward each other, we are drawn more toward each other because we become more aware of the underlying connection we're already in. So again, what does it mean? What does it mean to say the Dharma world supports us? What does it mean to say we belong to it or we belong in it? We have to use words much of the time for something that is beyond words. And so the words are an imperfect expression, but they are an expression of Dharma. And we need our own words, each other's words, the words of the books we read, the words of teachers. And I often turn to the words of Dogen. And one of my favorite old-time pieces by him about what it is to live in the Dharma world is what's called in our translation, the samadhi of the whole self. So it's a deep and, to me, gorgeous attempt to describe and express this reciprocal support of us and others, us and the world. And so because I so often forget, I so often turn toward this as a as a way of return, not just being reminded of something outside, but of being reminded of who I am and how I am. We each need to find our favorites of this, the things that speak to our own hearts. So here is just a piece of the Samadhi of the whole self. Dogen says, the land, trees and grasses, fences and walls, tiles and pebbles, all things in the 10 directions carry out Buddha work, and everyone shares in the benefits of these elemental forces. All are imperceptibly helped by the wondrous Buddha Dharma to awaken intimately to themselves, turning round and round the Buddha-making activity. All the beings involved in this bring forth the profound and inconceivable Dharma, and it is endless. It is for each and every being, one and the same practice, one and the same realization. It cannot be measured or comprehended. We turn to things like this not to feel how small we are in comparison. That's not, we have to drop that in order to get any of the benefit of our beloved texts. Just as of our beloved people. When you turn to someone you love, you don't generally turn to them thinking about their failings. You turn to them with the feeling of your love and their love. And that's how we need to approach the seminal texts, and as long with our Dharma friends, from our heart to theirs. We share one world of interwoven life, but our experience of it and our words for it differ because each of us has our unique language for life. And isn't that a fine thing, really? Even though it makes it hard to communicate, still a very fine thing. So we receive Dogen's words for his experience and see what kind of response it sparks in us for and about our own experience, rather than a logical exposition of understanding Dogen on Dogen's terms. We need to let Dogen spark something in our own understanding of our own experience. You know, there is a great promise in all things in the 10 directions carry out Buddha work, and everyone shares in the benefits. And we can get a glimpse of this. We can be reminded of this. And coupled with imperceptibly helped, which says we're relieved of having to know it. To receive a teaching like this isn't about knowing it. We are imperceptibly helped when we feel perhaps our ground shift a little bit, or our heart open a little, or a sense of ease. Dogen's way of seeing the world, the Dharma world, the world he sees is the Dharma world. This world he sees in these teachings is the Dharma world. He was an ordinary human being who didn't always see life in terms of the Dharma world. I remember once many decades ago sitting sesshin with Shohaku Kumura in Minnesota, and in connection with what he was teaching was some Dogen's admonitions about thinking 3 times before you say something. So Shohaku said, you know, because after all, Dogen is, in a sense, his best friend. He has spent more time with Dogen than any of the rest of us. It's an intimate connection. He said, Shohaku said, I think Dogen was an angry person. And so he was talking to himself, saying, I must think 3 times before I say something. So Dogen would do his best to do that, and then he could open to his understanding of the Dharma world and share that with us. So Dogen's way of seeing the Dharma world is an endless cycling activity of practice, love, and endeavor among all beings. And this activity of all the myriad small beings is the one world and the profound Dharma. It isn't somewhere else that we aspire to. Dogen says that for all beings, the Dharma is one and the same way, and one and the same awakening, each in our own personal form. I don't know what it's like for a deer or a mouse. I hardly know what it's like for a human. And it is imperceptible. You can't pin down living in the Dharma world. And if you aren't sure it's happening, well, that's okay. That's natural. How do we gain confidence in what cannot be measured or comprehended? Well, it's not all imperceptible. We and all the other beings, and the grasses and the pebbles, are constantly speaking, living, acting, and engaging. We learn to pay attention to it and to listen and receive the Dharma actions of other beings beyond how we may think we don't comprehend. We have to set aside the idea that we don't comprehend so that we can pay attention. Our world, the Dharma world, is not of a nature to be pinned down. And that's what we kind of mean when we say understand. We think it's something we can pin down. We can never pin down life or the Dharma world or yourself. Because like each of us, the world is endlessly moving, changing, and responding. And if we want to understand what the Dharma world changing, moving, and responding is, just look at yourself, changing, moving, and responding. You are the Dharma world doing that. It's like a little like scientists studying particles in a cloud chamber. They can see the traces the particles leave, but they can't actually see the particles themselves. And our lives evolve and grow as we embrace the Dharma that embraces us. And we can't see it directly so much, but we can see those effects in the cloud chamber of our life. I don't know what I would be like today if I had never encountered the Dharma, but I'm pretty sure it would be a much narrower life, a much narrower understanding, and a much less connected person. I'm not going to find out. So Dogen's language is beautiful and deep and vast, and sometimes hard to relate to because of that. Sometimes that makes it easier, sometimes it makes it harder. Easy and hard are just our human responses. Not good, not bad, that's just, we have all those responses. So Kodo Sawaki, Uchiyama Roshi's teacher, who was in turn, Sawaki Kodo was the Tozen's grandfather teacher. He used simpler language than Dogen to describe living in the Dharma world with all other beings. So he put it this way. Kodo Sawaki said, living out the Buddha Dharma means fulfilling your function completely without knowing that you're doing it. A mountain doesn't know it's tall. The sea doesn't know it's wide and deep. Each and everything in the universe is active without knowing it, without knowing what its activity means and is about. We all know that we are active, but we don't know our activity. The birds singing and the flowers' laughter appear naturally, completely independent from the person sitting in Zazen. The bird doesn't sing in honor of the person in Zazen. The flower doesn't blossom to amaze the person with her beauty. In exactly the same way, the person doesn't sit Zazen in order to get Satori. Every single being realizes the self through the self for the self of all things. Each of us, ordinary people, squirrels, mushrooms, realizes itself as it lives out its life as fully as it can. And in fulfilling its life, each one in its own way, not for someone else, the bird singing, the flower's laughter, the person living and breathing and loving, each one contributes deeply to the lives of others by being the most who we are in a world of endless connection. You know, we are always already in the Dharma world. The inconceivable Dharma is abundant in each person. But without the effort of aiming to wake up to reality, without the effort of studying your mind and your heart, without the effort of coming together as Sangha, this inconceivable Dharma remains quiescent, unrealized, and unavailable to you as joy, as guide, and as comfort. So you may say, but my practice isn't so good. I know, I can tell. My practice is on and off, it's up and down, it's upside down, it's not settled, well, all those other things we say. And that's one of the aspects of mind that we need to learn to see through. Of course, our practice wavers. That's an unavoidable characteristic of being human. The only thing worse than being a wavering human would be one that was rigidly stuck in one place. And that would be a lot worse. The question isn't whether our practice wavers, it's what we do about that. And I don't mean berate yourself or shrug your shoulders at yourself or give up on yourself. That's just throwing more good energy away. I mean, seeing it, letting it be true that you're deluded and your practice goes up and down, like mine. Seeing, attending, and caring, even though it is true that we waver. So it's, to some extent, we need to pay attention to our wavering, right? And attend to it and care for it. And also we need to just let it be that we waver and go through that and continue caring and loving and attending. Each kind of living being and each stone, each breeze, and each raindrop has a unique way of expressing the Dharma and contributing to the whole Dharma world that is all of us together. The way of deer and oaks and rocks is perhaps simpler and more direct. I wouldn't know, but I can surmise. But I don't envy them their way of life, even if I think it's simpler, more direct. Our way of living is complex and difficult. It's confusing, it's painful, and sometimes fearful, but it is ours. It's what and who we are. And it's also vast, joyful, funny, smart, loving. Dogen's inconceivable Dharma is where we already live. It's our home. Our job, you might say, our human function, as Sawaki put it, is to become aware of this and do our best to live in accord with it. Accountable to ourselves, to each other, to our humanness, to our world, not by being perfect, not by trying to be perfect, by fulfilling our imperfect humanness. Anyone who wasn't imperfect wouldn't have a clue about how to understand all the other people, since we're all imperfect. So being imperfect is part of what we share in common, our commonality. So how then will each of us go forward on the way of our life, aiming to wake up to who we are and to how we are together? How will we find support in the vast Buddha Dharma or the vaster Buddha Dharma Sangha that includes and holds us? children who grow up in settled, secure homes tend to be confident in life, not simply happy, but grounded and flexible. In our Zen practice, we have an opportunity to grow into confidence that we belong in and to this encompassing world. A world we share and a world we cannot be thrown out of. An awesome world. Even when we forget it, we're still here. But how much more potent and supportive it is to be awake to it. We're easily surprised, enlivened, I guess I should say, by sighting a red fox running along the road, or by seeing a bright maple leaf on the wet ground. It's a sudden, momentary awareness, much like a moment of spaciousness in Zazen. When that's what we're aware of, and our head has, the deluded mind has sort of faded out for a moment, and we are in contact intimately with ourself and our world. Each of these moments is not just a window, which is how we often feel it. It's a door. Each is a door into awareness of the Dharma world that is our true home. And all of you are doors for me. And I hope that is what we do for each other as Sangha. Thank you. I would love to hear from anyone who has any thoughts or responses or to this, or anything that this sparks in you that goes in a different direction. Or no words at all.
Hi, Jisho. I know that in Zen, as in your reading of Dogen, that we are compared to the mountains and the streams and animals, and obviously there's a certain peacefulness and connectedness in that. And yet we're much different because we have consciousness, which presents a whole set of things that deer and cats and trees don't have. So it seems to be, obviously one of the challenges of being human is our consciousness. Just wanted to comment.
No, I think every single being has its own form of consciousness, but most of them don't have the kind of self-aware consciousness that we have. They have an awareness of themselves in their environment and of each other. But yes, our form of consciousness, as far as we know, is different. It's at least quite different from most animals and plants' consciousness. I sometimes wish there were a way to know theirs a little bit. So as far as we know, the animals that have a consciousness of their environment in themselves, sort of embedded in it, and they feel their hunger and their satiety and desires, cold and thirst. They can naturally fulfill their lives. They are just simply doing their lives. They don't have the self-consciousness that breeds both delusion and awakening. But we do. As you say, we are in so many ways different. So what do we learn from the mountains and the rivers and the deer? There are many things we can learn from them across the differences and to be reminded of the kind areas of sameness. And yes, we also project an awful lot on the mountains and the rivers and the deer and the mushrooms. It's inevitable.
Jisho, I was just wondering, I mean, I brought this up years ago, but your comment about how the mountains and the pebbles and everything, can awaken this awareness in you. And I'm sort of getting back to the whole thing about we're sparked by the natural world, but what about, I always use the freeway on-ramp as my my example. I mean, there's a lot of things that are real ugly in this world. And so what are they doing for us as far as the Dharma?
It's a wonderful question. The freeway on-ramp is where we are so busy paying it. We better be so busy paying attention to driving and the edges and all that, that we need to be, in some sense, grateful for that's what's happening. I once had a dream in which I was on or off ramp of a highway, and I was suddenly blind. I couldn't see. I knew it was a curve. I couldn't see or feel anything. What do you do? What do you do then? So the world of busyness is a world where it's very hard for us to feel and see the Dharma world or ourselves as Dharma beings. So, but yet we are taking place in it. And on the on-ramp, we're taking care of what we have to take care of, where we're going, and all the other cars and the other people and the animals that might run across the road. We're in the busyness of our life. And yes, in the busyness of our life, that's about all we can do. But we are still living in the Dharma world, but we are pretty well unaware of it. We can but like the cloud chamber, I don't speed as much as I used to. And I'm more aware that I have to pay attention to what's in front of me. I don't even play music much in the car or listen to people speaking, which is harder. I tend to just do that. I've discovered that's hard enough, maybe because I'm getting older, but I think it's hard enough, but it's doing that thing as well and accepting that reality for now. And that it's in a way provisional, like all of our busyness. These are the acts we have to go through, but they are not the foundation of our life.
I have to say too that yesterday we were going somewhere on this road and we were coming to a stop sign and you got to watch out for the cars that are coming the other way. And we were next to a field at that point, and I looked over to the right, and here were these two farmers in their mud boots and everything, and they were lifting up this baby lamb that had just been born. Obviously there were two of them, and I'm just sort of like, wow, Rich, look at that.
Yeah, Rich, look at that. Rich is
oh
driving.
my God, it was so beautiful, and it was such a spark, and it was, that's the kind of thing that reminds you of.
Sticking with the driving and looking where he's going and taking care of you that way. But yes, we do need all those sparks, and we do need each other to help keep us safe while we're doing that. That was a rare sighting. Donna.
Thank you, Jisho. I really, really loved your talk. And I guess the thing that I struggle with is the imperceptible in the way of words. And I'm always in awe of all of you teachers and your talks, because I struggle all the time to find the words for my experience in the Dharma, or to explain it to someone who doesn't practice, which is even harder. And yet, if I just allow myself to experience life, and especially as the years go on in my practice, and I'm getting better at that, the Dharma is there. It's there, but it's just, so I guess what I'm trying to say is my confidence in my ability to speak about it is not very good, but yet I have this, Zazen has become so important in my life. That is where my confidence is. And if I waver, I can perceive differences in my life in that during those periods. And when I go back, I perceive differences. And that's the thing that's precious to me that I feel confident about. But anyway, that's my comment. And I don't know if you have anything to offer about that.
Well, some of us are poets and some write prose and some don't write anything. It's some people see in bright images, some people see in linear sentences. We just all have these different minds, and one isn't better than another. You have a sense of Dharma, you have a flavor of it in your mouth, and you have a sense of it beginning to permeate your life. That's it. You don't need to stand up here and give a talk, except when we asked you to give a way-seeking mind talk. And then you'll say, okay, you talk from your own experience. And that's where we all start, from our own experience. Haltingly, stumbling, yeah. Failing, trying again. And sometimes words, even a few words jotted down, are a way to help you come back to yourself another time. You don't come back to a previous experience, but you can be reminded of it. Same incense will do that. Bowing at the altar will do that. It doesn't have to be words. Coming on Sunday, sitting zazen, all of these are equivalent as ways to wake up in yourself, your sense of your being a Dharma being. They're all good.
Jisho, I too want to thank you. And I wanted to say that the way that you spoke the words of the samadhi of the whole self brought those words to life for me in a way that has never happened. I mean, we say it over and over again, but somehow the poetry of how you spoke it just took me to a different place. And I want to thank you. And it's a reminder of, to me, of that those words really are alive if I let them be.
When we chant them together and we make this simple in a line so that we can all chant together, that works fine as just a communal voice.
Mm-hmm.
But with this samadhi of the whole self, I keep it on my altar and I periodically memorize a paragraph or two and then forget it again. But I read it to myself. It almost more like a lullaby,
Mm-hmm.
like it's a warm and alive. And so I recommend that to whatever chant or teaching or passage speaks to you. Take it into your own personal context. I feel soothed.
Mm-hmm.
And enlivened. All Buddhas directly transmit inconceivable Dharma. It's take it to your own personal voice. Yeah.
Good morning, Jisho. Thank you. Thank you. Lovely. Soothing. I had two images when you were getting towards the end and you were talking about the window and the door and I thought you would mention the moose. I was waiting for the moose, Katagiri's moose, which is that aha, that. But the other piece of this is wonderful to settle in and to have something soothe. And it's the demons on the side, this is 2021 and we have 2022 and politics and the looming clown. And I'm sure Dogen lived in difficult times, difficult political times. And what does he have to say to offer us a way to be? I mean, I remember being in the monastery in the 70s and much going on, but I wasn't actively bombarded with it. But now it's the demons on the side, and I'm not sure if it's a mental construct or if there's a reality that I need to be able to see through with.
In Dogen's teachings, he didn't address the difficult passages of his own life when he really wanted to be. He was in south of Kyoto, and the monastery he'd been at, they came and tried to trash his monastery because he was teaching this radical Zen thing. And then he wanted to be appointed. They were going to build a big fancy Zen temple, an official one in Kyoto, the capital. And he wanted to be appointed the head, and they gave it to somebody else for political reasons. And he wound up then being offered this land on the far side of Japan, far away from anything, in a very harsh environment. And he was a cultivated man of the capital. He wasn't a country boy. And he packed up with his monks, and they walked all the way across Japan and over the mountains and built a monastery in the wilds. So there were a lot of, and then he was dying young. He knew he was dying. So lots of hard times, but they are not what he teaches when he's teaching Dharma. So when there are times we want to be focusing on teaching Dharma as Dharma. And then we want to be bringing it into our lives and into our world so that we can maybe meet these terrible situations right now. You know, the elections political winds are shifting, and how do we meet them with some sense of the Dharma? Well, sometimes we give our talks on meeting the world, meeting issues of racism, meeting the issues of climate change, meeting our own demons, or just political demons, or just the everyday demons of the day. But as we say, we're helped immeasurably by having the Dharma inside us and under us, and having that as our ground and our touchstone, so that we don't get as lost in these political worlds. So it is really not so much what Dogen teaches as what the living teachers teach, is how do we take our practice into the world, into this very messy and complicated world, and how do we live in this messy and complicated world? But we need to live in it while still aware of the Dharma world. And so we go both ways. Sometimes we talk out, pointing out, and sometimes we talk in a sense pointing in. So that's as much as I can offer today.
Right. Thank you very much.
But we never forgetting that we live in that kind of world, a very dire world, as well as a very beautiful one.
Thank you.
And thank you for the reminder. So shall we go to our closing chant?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. The 4 vows are in the chat. Four great bodhisattva vows, means are numberless. I vow to them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are infinite. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is boundless. I vow to realize it.